My husband and I, 27-year-old female, went to a festival this weekend in a town about a 4.5-hour drive away from where we live. We agreed in July that we would be staying at my dad and stepmother's place, as we haven't seen them since last year. We drove down on Friday evening after work and got there at around 8:30 p.m., ate dinner, caught up with my dad, and basically went to sleep an hour after getting there, as the festival started early, and we needed to leave the house by 8 a.m. The arrangement, according to me, which my husband agreed to initially, was that we would meet up with his brother's family at the festival and spend the day there. When we got there at around 9, we walked around for maybe 20 minutes before my husband told me we needed to go fetch his brother. He did not tell me that we were going to go to them and walk around with them. I kept quiet about needing to go back to my dad, chatting with my sister-in-law for a while, but told my husband we needed to go back to my dad soon. This was around half an hour after getting together with his brother. He told me we would, but another half an hour passed. My husband and his brother just kept walking through the stalls, looking at the displays and ignoring us. I was starting to get irritated, but wasn't angry. When we finally got back to the place we left my dad at, it was probably an hour and a half after leaving them to fetch my brother and sister-in-law. I called my dad to find out where they were, and understandably they had moved on to look at other displays around the festival. I then told my dad and my husband that we would meet each other by the entrance displays in half an hour so that I could first get something to eat. My sister-in-law wasn't hungry, and my husband and his brother ate something when we met them earlier. I ultimately decided not to buy something as the lines for the food were too long, so I told my husband we needed to find my dad. This was over 2 hours after we had left them. But no, the baby was getting fussy, so no one could leave. We needed to find somewhere to sit so that he could eat. We went back into the main hall to find a seat, which took another 20 minutes because they had to look at the displays shown in the main hall. Okay, so we get to the seating area and we get coffee, and the baby is eating. I again, maybe for the 4th time, reminded my husband we need to go back to my dad. But this time, my sister-in-law heard me. The other times, I pulled my husband aside so they didn't hear me saying we all needed to go, and she rolled her eyes. I couldn't believe it when I saw that, and I know my husband also saw but didn't do anything. They then said that the main event was starting at 1. Mind you, we had left to fetch them at around 10. So this was about 3 hours of my dad and stepmother, who were hosting us for the weekend, being alone and me trying to get my husband to listen to me. I was angry at this point, and my husband saw and he told me to just call my dad and tell him to come to us. I wasn't going to be telling my dad what to do. A person's child doesn't just tell them what to do in our culture. It's considered rude. I did tell my dad that the main event was starting soon and we could save them a seat if they wanted. The reply I got made it clear that he was unhappy that we left them alone for so long. But around 1:20 p.m., he called me to say they were at the main building and would join us. When they got there, my brother and sister-in-law greeted them quickly and went back to looking at the main event, which is fine. We were there to watch this event. But not long after, they, my husband, his brother, and sister-in-law, just left. They didn't say where they were going or anything. They just left. At least at this point, I could spend time with my dad and stepmother. By the end of this event, we were sitting around a table, having lunch and talking. That's when my husband and them showed up and sat with us. Barely 5 minutes later, my brother-in-law walked away and my husband followed him. My dad, stepmother, sister-in-law, and I were left there for another hour or so before they came back. By that time, we had seen everything available at the festival and needed to leave to go shopping for dinner and to get home in time for the sports that were happening. Rugby is big in our culture. We said goodbye and then went our separate ways. We got to my dad's house just before 5 p.m., and immediately my husband disappeared into the bathroom without saying a word and stayed in there until the match was almost halfway through. I feel like he showed me that he doesn't respect my wishes and my relationship with my dad. I am building a better relationship with them, as a lot has happened in the last few years. And I do feel that if I don't at least apologize for missing half the day with them, I would be losing some of the progress I've made. I just want advice on how to apologize to my dad for his behavior, mine as well, as I'm not innocent in this. I didn't stand up for what I wanted to do. The whole reason why I feel like I need to apologize is because we live so far away and are still early in our careers. We barely make enough to live each month, so we never get to go visit. And my dad tries to visit every time he's in our town, but that happens every other month for an hour if I'm lucky. My husband's family is in town all the time visiting his mother. We see them at least once a month. So my question is, how must I approach this with my dad in order to apologize? And how do I tell my husband I'm unhappy with how everyone acted and that I won't go to a festival like this with him again because he loses all his respect for me when we are near things like this? Almost forgot, it's late at night and I'm still quite upset. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, maybe try, I'm sorry I didn't leave my husband and his family to spend the day with you. It was rude of me and I'm sorry. I'm also sorry my husband is so rude and I apologize for his behavior too. Comment 2, why didn't you just leave them to go find your dad? Yes, your husband is rude, but you could have hung out with your father while your husband followed his brother around all day. Now for the update. A few days after the festival, I called my dad to apologize for that whole disaster of a day. He was super understanding, but he mentioned that he felt pretty neglected during the festival. His words hurt a bit, but I had to deal with it. It was time to talk to my husband directly about how he acted. I asked him about all the times he just disappeared and how those moments affected my relationship with my dad. He brushed off my concerns, saying that I was overreacting. I mean, seriously? This was the man I married. We were supposed to be a team, not just me doing everything in a bad rom-com. This led to a tense argument where he accused me of being too attached to my dad. Like, excuse me? My dad and I have had a pretty rocky relationship in the past, and we were just starting to fix it. So yeah, I was going to be a little attached. A week later, my husband's brother invited us to a barbecue at his place. I agreed to go, hoping it would help fix things with my husband. Spoiler alert, it did not. At the barbecue, the atmosphere was awkward. My husband was practically a ghost. He was there, but not really there, you know? I caught him laughing with his brother, as if he had totally forgotten about me and our issues. Then, I overheard him making a joke about my attachment to my dad. It was like a knife to the gut. I confronted him about the joke right then and there, and he dismissed me again, saying I needed to lighten up. What was it going to take for him to get how serious this was? The next day, he texted me saying he was going out with his brother. So I decided to spend the evening with my dad instead. While I was at my dad's house, we sorted through some old boxes and found family photos. One photo caught my eye. It was my dad with my husband's father from years ago. I had no idea they even knew each other. That gave me an idea. I decided to pull together a small family gathering at my dad's for the upcoming holiday. I secretly invited my husband's parents, hoping to catch my husband off guard. On the day of the gathering, my husband showed up late, and you could see the annoyance written all over his face. But then his expression changed when he saw his parents there. The room was filled with tension as he realized I had planned this whole thing. It was a chaotic mix of awkward conversations and unresolved issues. I had planned a game where everyone could air their grievances in a light-hearted way. As the game went on, my husband's frustrations spilled over, and he confronted me about what I had done. He accused me of trying to control his family dynamics. The evening ended with him storming off to the bathroom, isolating himself again. After a while, he came back, but the atmosphere had shifted. His parents were visibly upset. They confronted him about how he acted towards me. Finally, he snapped and demanded everyone leave. The gathering ended with his parents leaving and him feeling embarrassed. After that, I quietly packed my things and left with my dad. A few days later, I got a message from my husband, apologizing for his actions. I told him I'd be staying with my dad for a while. He kept reaching out, but I was staying distant. Eventually, he showed up at my dad's house to talk face to face. I opened the door, ready to deal with the situation head on. I'm still processing everything that went down. Seeing him in front of me, all sad and apologetic, made me feel a mix of anger, hurt, and just a little bit of love. But I know I can't let my emotions run the show right now. I really need to think about what I want and what I need. It's going to take time to figure everything out, and I might have to deal with some more stuff with my dad and my husband. So yeah, more updates to come, I guess. To answer a few questions, my husband and I have been married for over 2 years, and our relationship has had its ups and downs. We struggled with communication, which became evident during the festival. Prior to all this, we had discussed spending time with my dad and his family separately, which made his actions more disappointing. I believe he has a good relationship with his parents, but he never wanted to involve them in our issues. I don't know how his parents found out about the barbecue, but it was a surprise to him. I'm not sure what happens next, but I need time to think. Am I the idiot for wanting to break up with my controlling boyfriend despite his threats of self-harm? My boyfriend has been mentally exhausting from the beginning, and we got together in high school after I was pressured to date him. He has had really low self-esteem and constantly vies for my validation, but I have been able to semi-reassure him. I was fine with that until it started manifesting in him being controlling and almost like a guard dog to me, standing behind me scowling when I would talk to other people. Recently, we both entered college, and I was hanging out with someone I became friends with at orientation. He freaked out and cried in the car at me because he was jealous and didn't like the person for, as he said, no particular reason. Mostly, he has had issues with me hanging out with people outside of our small group of friends because he doesn't want people to take advantage of me or hit on me. This really rubbed me the wrong way. Then semi-recently I was talking about getting Scottish citizenship because it seems a lot safer. I'm a queer and trans person in America, and I have family over there, and he yet again freaked out because he didn't want to live a life without me and was afraid to lose me. Then I freaked out because I'm afraid of being trapped, and we're still really young. For context, my mom was trapped with my hurtful father for a long time, and it really messed me up and made me sort of non-committal. Not in an infidelity way at all, but more so being afraid of not having an out or having independence, not being able to make decisions for myself. I also recently learned that he didn't like one of my ex-friends before my boyfriend and I got together, not because he was a bad person, but because I was closer with him than I was with my boyfriend at the time. I didn't really know him. Another thing is that we're both trans, female to male, and I've been out for 5 years, medically transitioning for a little over 2 years. This wouldn't be an issue if my boyfriend were out to his family. He came out to his mom, and she was neutral. He really wants testosterone and top surgery, but refuses to come out to any more of his family. Every time we talk, he ends up complaining about being dead-named and misgendered, but then takes no agency to avoid being dead-named and misgendered. I told him flat out that I can't keep having this same conversation because it's draining on my mental health, but he keeps having it. Furthermore, his anger issues have worsened, and he emits this constant aura of anger. I can't deal with this. I also have complex post-traumatic stress disorder from being emotionally abused as a child, so this is very triggering. It's also difficult because he can be really sweet and funny, but the cons have just been building up for a long time, and I've been gradually distancing myself because I get stressed being around him, but it makes me feel really awful. I'm scared to break up with him because when I told him I can't deal with his strong emotions all the time, he said he was suicidal, also triggering because my dad would do the same thing. I want to stay friends because I don't want to lose my other friends. I was friends with them first, and some of them have said they would harm themselves if we broke up, but I think they're joking, and I don't know what to do. Help. To add, my friends have said that they would harm themselves if we broke up, but my boyfriend did bring up unalived when I was talking about how I don't know if I can stay together. I'm not sure if it makes any difference, though. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Okay, this man needs a psychological intervention. Anyone, and I mean anyone, threatening unalived is extremely emotionally unstable. If he's instilling this much control over what you can and can't do, then the relationship isn't about love for him. It's a toxic obsession, and that is dangerous for both of you. Call a hotline if you're going to break up with him, but you need to get out of there. Comment 2. Break up, and when he says he's going to harm himself, call the police. Call the police. They will either get him the help he needs for being suicidal, or he will have to explain a very awkward situation. Either way, your conscience is clear, move on, and live your best life. Now for the update. A couple of days after the last incident, I decided to meet with my friend Jamie at the local library to talk things through. Honestly, I needed to get my head straight and figure out what the heck was going on with my boyfriend. I was so done with the drama and just wanted to have a normal life for once. Jamie was always there for me, so I figured talking it out over some stale library coffee was my best bet. So we met up and I started spilling all the tea, from the crazy outburst to the whole Scottish citizenship thing that had my boyfriend really upset. Jamie said she couldn't believe how messed up things were with us and suggested I reach out to my boyfriend to clear the air and see how he was doing. I wasn't sure if that was a good idea. What if he flipped out again? But I knew I couldn't keep avoiding him, so I texted him to ask if we could meet, and he agreed to come over to my apartment later that evening. The day went by super fast. I cleaned up my place and tried to prepare for whatever was about to happen. When my boyfriend showed up, he looked a bit disheveled, wearing a hoodie that seemed to swallow him. I guess he was feeling insecure or something because he was definitely not looking like his usual self. We sat on the couch and I could tell he was nervous. He kept fidgeting with the sleeves of his hoodie like he was trying to disappear into it or something. It was kind of sad, honestly. We talked and he brought up my interest in Scottish citizenship again, this time sounding more desperate than before. He asked if I was planning to leave him for good, and I assured him that wasn't the case. I mean, I didn't really know what I wanted, but I wasn't about to bail on him just like that. We ended our talk with a somewhat awkward hug. I couldn't help but feel like things were still super messed up between us. The next day, I got a text from my mom inviting me to a family dinner at her place. I hesitated, but decided it might be a good distraction, so I asked my boyfriend if he wanted to come. He agreed, but I could see his anxiety creeping back as we approached my parents' house. I could just feel the tension in the air. At dinner, my dad made jokes about my brother's baby on the way, which made my boyfriend visibly tense. My sister brought up her recent engagement, which led to my boyfriend becoming more withdrawn. Honestly, it was like he was fading away right in front of us. Halfway through the meal, my boyfriend suddenly stood up and announced he needed to go outside for fresh air. I followed him outside and found him pacing on the porch, muttering to himself. He turned to me, looking panicked, and said he felt like he was losing control. I tried to calm him down, but he got angry, yelling that I didn't understand what he was going through. I stepped back, shocked by the outburst in front of my family. It was so embarrassing, like I just wanted to disappear. My mom appeared at the door, concerned, and asked if everything was okay. My boyfriend quickly claimed he was just feeling overwhelmed. We went back inside, and my boyfriend sat in silence, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The whole dinner was super awkward after that. After dinner, as we were leaving, my brother pulled me aside and asked if everything was all right between me and my boyfriend. I brushed it off, telling him we were just going through some stuff. I could see the worry in his eyes, but I didn't want to get into it. Later that night, I got a message from my boyfriend saying he needed space to figure things out. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. The next day, I was surprised to find out from Jamie that my boyfriend had been seen at a local cafe with someone else. I couldn't believe it. I confronted him about the cafe sighting, and he denied it at first. After some back and forth, he admitted he went there to talk with another friend, but insisted nothing was happening. He suggested we take a break, saying he needed to focus on himself and his transition. I agreed to the break, but made it clear that I needed to discuss things further before making any final decisions. A week later, I met with my parents for lunch, and they brought up my boyfriend's behavior. They were worried, and honestly, so was I. I confronted my boyfriend about the break and my decision to separate. He reacted angrily, threatening to harm himself, which triggered my past trauma. I couldn't handle that. I immediately called a trusted relative to come over and support me. My relative arrived quickly, and I shared everything that had happened. Together, we worked on a plan to make sure my boyfriend would get the help he needed. I ended the conversation with my boyfriend on a firm note. I just didn't know what else to do. Edit. After the last message, my boyfriend's cousin reached out to me, expressing concern for his well-being. We agreed to do a wellness check, and thankfully, he was okay. We also arranged for a mental health professional to speak with him. He still wants a break, but we're working on setting boundaries. Am I the idiot for refusing to invite my dad's manipulative girlfriend to my wedding? To add, many people are commenting the same thing, so I just want to clear something up. Poppy seemed to be a nice lady. I just looked it up because I was confused. It seems like I haven't written it down properly. Sorry for the confusion. My parents have been separated since I was about 7 years old, and they handled it awfully. What followed were years of them talking badly behind each other's back to us, fights, even in the street, which was super embarrassing, and mental abuse by my mother, who especially handled things badly after my dad cheated on her. They both generally didn't fit well together. This just ended things, definitely. My mom is like a firecracker. She can explode from one moment to another and doesn't care who she hurts doing so. She always used to be like this. It sounds crazy, but besides that, she was just a single mom with 3 kids who worked her hardest for us. I never doubted that she loved us, but if something negative happened, school-related especially, she would scream and cry for hours, going from, "I'm such a bad mother," to saying hurtful things about what she was doing for us. My dad couldn't provide at that time. It was rough. Years later, I'm now 29, we have a good relationship. She apologized, now married for years. My father apologized, and after I found the best person on earth who was even willing to work with me on some of those issues, I eventually got as a child of divorce, we got engaged, and I will formally marry soon. The wedding party will be in 2026. My parents' relationship is good now. They can peacefully coexist in one room, and it's nice. Now my father has a girlfriend, I'll call her Poppy, and she's a kind, nice lady from his hometown. They rekindled and have been dating for over 10 years. I really liked her. She was the perfect mix of kind, funny, and educated, and I felt like my father opened up more again. Now, like 7 years ago, I was 22. My mom and she were close friends until they had a falling out. Apparently, Poppy told my mom all the things we said about her when I was around 17 years old. We talked badly about our mom because of her character and her inability to hold discussions without screaming at us at full volume and making us hate her existence. And my mother, of course, felt betrayed by us. Apparently, Poppy went on about how we think she's a psycho, that nobody wants to be near her, and other things. Apparently, the fight started because Poppy told my mother that she cheated on my dad, and my mother said she needed to tell him the truth. After she refused, my mother wrote to my dad and told him. In my opinion, my mother has many flaws, but I felt like she was always honest. So I guess I believed her when she told me the story. Apparently, Poppy has been doing shady stuff in general, trying to trick my brother into giving her money. She made me feel bad at 17, so I gave her my dad's iPad password, which, well, didn't go well. She made my father leave our family chat group that contained my mother in it. As you can imagine, it was easy to believe my mom after all that. I don't have any contact with her. Only when I'm at my dad's and they FaceTime am I civil. They have a long-distance relationship. She always seems fake nice to me. Now, my mother told me that she will not come to my wedding party unless Poppy stays at home. My brothers and I talked to her about it, but she's dead set on it, which of course I can understand. Now, I don't know the full story, and it might sound heartless, but my mother is prone to overreacting badly sometimes. She takes criticism poorly, and it always ends with her yelling and us just not caring anymore. Not saying Poppy is right at all, but I'm caught between two sides, and honestly, I'm super upset. After all those years of mental torture from my distant father, who still can't properly show affection most of the time, and my emotionally draining mother, I'm so upset that after all they put me and my brothers through, they can't just do this one thing for me and be civil for one day. I'm no bridezilla, but I think everyone understands when I want this to be about my fiancé and me, a day with our loved ones. They don't contribute financially, by the way. I will talk to my dad, but I don't even know how to tell him what my mom said. I'm tired of this and don't know what to do. Any advice on what I should do? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Honestly, elope. Plan a vacation and get married somewhere beautiful. Anyone who truly cares about you will want you to have a stress-free wedding, whether they are there to witness the moment or not. Then have a party when you get back. Invite anyone you want, and if someone else doesn't want to come, they can RSVP no. Comment 2. Why invite Poppy? Just curious. She has only stirred up drama with you all and tried to hurt the relationship with your mom, dad, and between you all. Poppy seems like a major problem. It's really inappropriate she asked for money from your brothers. Just invite your parents without a +1. Now for the update. 2 weeks after my last post, I called my dad to talk about the wedding situation. He was busy but promised to call me back later that day. Spent the day just thinking about how to say everything without making things worse. Not sure how I could do that, but I figured I'd give it a shot. Later that evening, my dad called back and asked to meet up for dinner to talk about it. We chose a local Italian restaurant where my parents used to take me as a kid. Just walking in there brought back a lot of memories, you know? During dinner, I brought up the wedding guest list and mentioned my mom's concerns about Poppy. His face just kind of dropped. Dad frowned and said Poppy was really excited about the wedding and wanted to be included. I told him I understood that, but reminded him that my mom wouldn't attend if Poppy was there. He sighed and said he was just so tired of the drama between them and wanted to enjoy the day. Like, who wouldn't? I suggested a compromise, like having a separate area for Poppy at the reception. He didn't like that idea at all. Said it would only make things more complicated. We ended up arguing because he thought I was being unfair to Poppy. My dad accused me of holding grudges against Poppy for past stuff. I mean, it's not just that, it's how she acted recently too. He just dismissed my concerns, saying Poppy was good for him and that I needed to accept that. That really hurt, to be honest. The next day, I got a text from my mom asking about dinner with Dad. I told her it didn't go well and she wanted more details. I explained the whole argument, and she brought up Poppy's past again. Like, we get it, Poppy has a shady past. My mom mentioned that Poppy had invited her to lunch the following week. I felt uneasy about my mom having lunch with Poppy. I told her that it could lead to more drama, but my mom insisted it was a chance to clear the air. I was just skeptical about this whole thing. Later that week, I overheard my mom on the phone with a friend talking about the lunch. She mentioned how she was nervous but wanted to try to resolve things. I was shocked when I heard her planning to confront Poppy about her comments. That could either go really well or really bad. The lunch happened, and my mom texted me afterwards saying it was just awkward. She said Poppy deflected all the serious topics and focused on small talk. Classic Poppy, right? A few days later, my dad invited me to a family gathering at their house. I arrived to find Poppy already there, which just made everything so much more uncomfortable. We had dinner, and Poppy tried to engage in small talk with me. I kept my responses short, like one-word answers. She looked annoyed, but honestly, I didn't care. My dad noticed the tension and tried to lighten the mood with jokes, but it just wasn't working. During dessert, Poppy brought up the wedding and asked if I was excited. My dad interjected, saying we should all just focus on the wedding. It was like we had this unspoken agreement to not talk about it at all, you know? The conversation shifted, but the atmosphere was still kinda heavy. Edit. Since posting, I've received a lot of suggestions for how to manage the wedding situation, so I wanted to share what I've done. I spoke with my partner and we decided to have an open discussion about the guest list with both parents. We figured this would clear up any misunderstandings. We also talked about having a wedding planner to help manage any issues that might arise. Additionally, some people suggested sending Poppy and my mom separate invitations. We decided against that because we didn't want to escalate tensions further. I really hope that all this will lead to a more peaceful wedding experience. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.